Hello, this is Good Morning Transfers. Enzo Maresca delivers a brutally honest news conference. There's no room for Raheem Sterling or Ben Chilwell in his squad, so where can they go? We'll assess both of their options. Also to come this hour, Newcastle draw up a list of alternative options to Marc Guéhi. Manchester United are yet to agree a deal with PSG for Manuel Ugarte. And we'll also look set to see the shock return of Ilkay Gundogan to Manchester City. Loads to discuss as the deadline fast approaches. If you are out and about as well, you can keep right up to date with everything that's going on with the transfer news. Our dedicated Transfer Centre blog is available for you. Just scan the QR code on your screen right now. A very good morning to you at home. We'll welcome our guests in a moment. We'll discuss Chelsea too. There they are. Hello. Let's get to Newcastle though first, shall we? Keith Downey is there for us. Morning to you, Keith. Let's get straight into it then. Newcastle have had multiple bids turned down by Crystal Palace for defender Marc Guéhi. Any update for us this morning on that potential deal?
Yeah, morning, Dave. It's become a bit of a saga, this one, hasn't it? Newcastle attempting to break their club record transfer, which, of course, stands 2 years ago. Alexander Isak arriving for £63 million back then from Real Sociedad. And I have to say, it feels as though their protracted move for Marc Guéhi is getting closer. I understand talks continued between the two clubs yesterday as they attempt to find a resolution to what has really become a standoff between Crystal Palace and Newcastle. We told you last week that Newcastle had made an offer of £65 million, which was £60 million up front with £5 million in performance-related add-ons. That was rejected, or it was left on the table, shall we say, by Crystal Palace. And there was a belief from people involved in the deal that a deal could be struck. Now, news broke just under 48 hours ago that Crystal Palace had agreed a fee with Fulham for their defender Joachim Andersen, and I think many Newcastle fans thought, well, that means our move for Guéhi is now off. That is not how I understand it, and I am of the belief that there's a chance that both players could be sold in the next week, with Crystal Palace lining up alternatives. So as I stand here, and of course this is an ever-changing story, Dave, as I stand here on Thursday morning, I think there's a decent chance of that Marc Guéhi deal going through. But Newcastle, and rightly so, are looking at alternatives in case it does eventually fail.
So there's still a chance. And if it isn't Guéhi, tell us about those other targets
Good chance.
for Newcastle.
Yeah, good chance, Dave, I think, of it eventually going through for Guéhi. But look, it's difficult to say because it has taken so long. It's so protracted. We've heard what the Palace owner, Steve Parish, has said. And without doubt, look, they've made it difficult for Newcastle. They are still making it difficult for Newcastle, but both clubs trying to find a resolution. To answer your question as to possible alternatives, I think Newcastle casting their net wide, but two names that were put to me yesterday. One we know well from his time at Chelsea in the shape of Axel Disasi. Of course, he signed from Monaco last summer and played for a year. It looks like he could potentially be out of favour at Stamford Bridge. I'm told that Newcastle are exploring a deal for him. Now, he is one that it was put to me they looked at last summer, but they decided against. But I think it would be a player with a year under his belt at Chelsea who could probably come in and do a job for Newcastle under Eddie Howe. The other is Edmund Tapsoba, the Bayer Leverkusen defender, who of course was part of that Leverkusen team last season that went the whole Bundesliga season without losing a game, and I think it would be one that the Newcastle fans would love to see here at St James's Park. Now, while I'm told from sources that Newcastle are exploring a deal and have inquired over his availability, I'm also being told from sources over in Germany that it's unlikely that Tapsoba would leave, and he's already given Leverkusen and Xabi Alonso his word that he will stay this summer. But look, I think it's understandable from Newcastle's point of view. They do have to look elsewhere. They're in desperate need for a central defender, even more so on the back of Fabian Schär's red card on Saturday, meaning he is suspended for the next 3 matches. Very light in reinforcements there, and if they're not able to get their number one target, Marc Guéhi, they have to start looking looking elsewhere. But certainly, as I say, as I stand here on Thursday morning, with regards to Mark Gahey, I would watch this space because it feels, from what I'm hearing, that an agreement might be edging closer.
OK, Keith, we'll keep our eyes peeled. Thanks very much for now. Let's get to Chelsea there next. Raheem Sterling has lost his number 7 shirt after Enzo Maresca said he would struggle for minutes at the club this season. Chelsea are willing to listen to offers for the winger, who would rather stay in the Premier League if he leaves this summer. Maresca also said that Ben Chilwell is surplus to requirements.
I just try to be honest. I said, and I can repeat again in case it's not clear, I spoke with Raheem before City game. I said that he's going to struggle to get minutes with us, and this is the reason why he was out of the squad. A big squad, and for me it's impossible to give all of them minutes. So some of them, if they are looking for minutes, probably it's better to leave. And in case they don't leave, they have a contract here and they are Chelsea players. I'm working in this moment with 21 players. Today's session is with 20 players. Yesterday's session was with 21. So it's the other 15 or 20. They are training apart, but they are not working with me every day. I don't see them. So it's not a mess like looks from outside.
Enzo Maresca then said it's impossible to give everyone minutes. We're going to give some minutes to our guests, though, now this morning. Flex, Olivia and Sam are with us. After the weekend, I mean, Sterling wanted some clarity. It seems like Maresca delivered.
Yeah, and I think players in these situations, whenever you talk to Premier League players and you say what you like about a manager, and honesty is always an answer they're given. Now, maybe not this honest, but when a new manager comes in, you have to make tough decisions. And we'll get onto the size of Chelsea's squad in a second, because we know that that's quite big. But I think he has been brutally honest, but it feels like for Raheem Sterling, for Ben Chilwell, it's probably the right thing for them, because you don't want to be dragged into a season not knowing where you stand, not knowing if you might get minutes, not knowing if you are going to get minutes. It will be harsh for them to take, because, especially I think for Raheem Sterling, because of the career he's had, the clubs he's been at, the managers he's played under. It's been quite a tricky time for him in general, I think. He hasn't been settled under one manager. I don't know how many managers he's played under at Chelsea, but it's quite a lot for the time he's been at the club. But a manager needs to make those big decisions. And for him to come out and be that brutally honest and say, listen, I don't think you're going to get the minutes. Maybe it's time for you to look for a right club. I think Raheem Sterling, he will appreciate it. It might not be what he wants, because I think he probably wants to stay and prove himself and prove that he can be part of this squad. But it's the wages that are going to be an issue now for someone like Raheem Sterling. Ben Chilwell as well. They're both on a ridiculous amount of money compared to what the new signings are on at the club. So the fees might not be that high, but I think the wages will be high. And it's difficult now because Chelsea need to sell, and clubs know that. But in terms of Maresca, he's done what he feels was the right decision. It feels like it's best for the team, best for what he wants his team to be and how he wants his team to play. But from an outsider looking in, I mean, it feels quite harsh, but maybe that's the way you've got to go.
I think it's difficult for both parties, to be honest, because like Liv said, when you look at Maresca, he's coming to a club where there's so many players, there's so many people to almost, keep happy, because he knows he was a player and he spoke about that, and he knows what it's like to be a player that's not in favour. But for him, he's got a job to do. He's got to, almost orchestrate a side where there's so much pressure, there's so many players coming in. But from the players' perspective, like Liv said, when you look at Sterling and Chilwell, especially Sterling, he's achieved so much in his career, and he's almost always had something to prove at Chelsea, especially. I spoke to him last season and he said, I've still got something to prove here. And it was that energy that almost gave Chelsea fans hope. OK, cool. At the start of the season, he said he's going to get the most goals. He wasn't able to do that. And I think now he's probably seeing it as he's not been given the opportunity to prove to the Chelsea fans and to others that he's not done at the top level. He can still perform. So I think it's a difficult situation, especially when you see the way things have unravelled with his number and all of those things. So it's difficult.
It just feels like the decision's been made quite quickly, because he did play a little bit in pre-season. I mean, a question was asked to Maresca at the press conference, said, oh no, you played Raheem, and he was like, yeah, but I played Misha there as well, and I played another player there as well. So it was him almost experimenting with who he wanted as that sort of left winger. I mean, now Pedro Neto's come in as well. It seems to be a player that, that Maresca prefers in that position. But you know, for everything that Raheem Sterling has achieved in the game, for him to have been given one pre-season game effectively, and Maresca's made his mind up like that, I mean, it just feels like it's been made quite quickly. But I mean, fair play to Maresca. He's the one that's got to make it. And if he's seen enough in that one game to suggest that he's not the winger that he wants, then what can you say?
Also, I think Maresca, in terms of, like you said, Maresca was brutally honest and etc. etc. Personally, I saw that as come out, be honest. No problem with that. He's a new manager, and with what's happening at Chelsea right now, with how, I wouldn't say toxic, but just how difficult it is to manage the situation, he's got to come in and get results and focus on the players that are there. Absolutely no problem with that. He has to do that. I almost think it's a situation where potentially the decision could have been made out of his hands in terms of this is a player that maybe doesn't fit our current model. When we brought Raheem to the football club, it did. We've now pivoted from that strategy, and now we want to look to move him on. So actually, don't even consider using this player as part of your plans, because actually we've made a decision that it's best for the football club that he moves on. So from a managerial standpoint, I wouldn't really put too much of this on Maresca and it's an outrage that he said this and that and the other. At the end of the day, this is a player that he's arrived at the football club. He's probably been told, in my opinion, that he's not going to be part of the plans and they're going to look to move him on. How the club then go on to do that is not necessarily to do with the manager. He has to work on the playing squad. He has to get results. There's a whole bunch of players there, and Chelsea need to improve from where they were last season and kick on. So I wouldn't really put a lot of blame at Maresca's door. I would almost sort of say the institution and the people who are making the decisions have created this sort of environment, it feels.
And, you know, I think in an ideal world, it's not with 8 days to go that this decision is made for Raheem Sterling. It's made with 30, a month, 6 weeks to go.
For sure.
And he's able to go out and then find a club. And it's not a snap decision at the end of the window, but football doesn't tend to work like that often. You know, maybe Maresca did want to have a look at him. Maybe the club decided, right, this is not going to be the player that we want to build our team around anymore, and it needs to change. So I think in an ideal world, yes, it would have been a month, 6 weeks ago, but this is the situation we're in now. It's just the fact that there seems to have been a succession of different decisions which has kind of built up to this situation. If this Sterling situation was an isolated thing, you could probably, you know, accept it a little bit more. It's just the difficulty in the build-up to these decisions.
Yeah, I think it's, when you see the signings of Pedro Neto, João Felix now, it's almost like, OK, cool, these are the players that are coming in to replace you. And like Liv said, because of the wage and the fact that you was at the start of this new regime, it's almost as if you've always got something to prove, whether it be to yourself, your teammates. Obviously, he'll think to himself, he's playing a different role in terms of what he's doing for the club because he's a senior player. But at the same time, like Flex said, it's about results. You have to get goals, you have to get assists, you have to contribute to the team. And a lot of Chelsea fans are split on his output and what he has done for the team. But he's probably thinking to himself, are there other players that have done what I've done in that time? But at the same time, it comes down to the fee and what the club are doing moving forward.
So, dig a bit deeper for us then, Sam. Why do you think Chelsea have come to this decision on Sterling and Chilwell in particular?
Well, it's literally what we've been saying, to be honest. When you look at, you know, Chilwell, he came in under the old regime. Sterling came in under the new regime, but at the very start where they were still working out how much people are going to be getting paid and what their wage structure is going to be. But when you look at the output that we just mentioned with Sterling, games played 59, games missed 18, but the goals is very low. And when you look at the comparison to Manchester City, he's never had a goal tally under 10. You know, first season in the Premier League for Chelsea, he got 6. The second season, he got 8. He had very inconsistent times for them, 7 assists. But at the same time, he could be saying, that's not what I'm doing anymore. You know, I'm playing this role, but also I'm a leader to the other players. But when you look at Chilwell, I think the biggest issue with Chilwell is the games that he missed. You know, the first season was just perfect. He came in, he won the Champions League, he was one of Chelsea's better players, he got the pre-assist for the final goal, but he's missed 83 games in that time. That is a lot of games for someone that is seen as a senior player. And both of these players, their roles have changed during that time. You know, the season when Sterling came in and Chilwell was obviously still there, Chilwell was seen as a senior player. Sterling was now seen as a senior player. I don't know if that was the role that they necessarily was told that was going to be. It was almost pushed onto them because of the likes of Kovacic, Jorginho, Kante, Mendy. All of these players are leaving. So you can almost see why, especially when you look at both of those players being 2 of the top 5 of earners at Chelsea. But But now, when you look at these situations, I actually want to ask you guys, do you think that this is going to affect how other players are going to see their situation? Maybe the players that are earning a bit more than the others?
I think you have to look at that in a dressing room. Players speak. Players are aware, not even just speak. They can see with their eyes that they're in the same club. And if you are a senior player or a player who is on a higher wage than others, there is going to be a sense of, I'm probably next. If you can see Raheem Sterling, who's one of the most decorated English players there's been, if you can see Raheem Sterling, who's had a fantastic career, be in this position, then it's fair game at Chelsea. And I don't think you could be sitting there resting on your laurels. And I think if you're not a regular in that Chelsea team or performing, if you're not Cole Palmer, yeah, exactly, then the likelihood is that there's always going to be a chance that the new decision makers at Chelsea could see your future elsewhere. That is the nature of what Chelsea is in this moment until they settle down, until they get some consistency and build sort of a sample size of players who have been there for, say, a year, 2 years, and you can see a steady upwards trajectory. I mean, Cole Palmer has come and been an anomaly in one season.
Yeah.
You know, Caicedo last year needed time to unravel. Enzo Fernandez is trying to find his feet. Lavia was injured all last year, so there's still players trying to and Kunku was injured, so the sample size of the signings that they've actually made is still quite small. Fofana, no, he was signed before that, injured. So I do think that they will be looking over their shoulder. And if it's someone like even Reece James, of course, he's seen what's happened to Conor Gallagher, obviously club captain, etc. now. But with the injuries that he's had, you know, what does it look like if he comes back and still can't keep fit? And would he get the same treatment that Conor Gallagher has had to face? We have to wait and see, but I definitely think it will make players uneasy for sure.
What about the number of players that Maresca's actually working with? Because a lot of people have talked about this, but what's the actual figure? Because he talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, he did. It's not actually as many as people think. There has been genuine outrage about this because people have been reporting that, you know, Maresca's got 45 players to deal with. Now, he doesn't. He actually came out in his press conference and said, we had 20 players training the other day. We had 20 and then 21 the next day. So I think he'll have a squad of about 25, 26. I mean, you can see there, these are the players training away from the first team. They're being trained under Carlo Cudicini. I mean, Nizar Kinsella, who reports on Chelsea a lot, did a really good thread on X about this. Raheem Sterling was one of those up until literally a day ago. He was training, you know, with the team as well. So look, you look at some of those names. Kepa Arrizabalaga will be difficult to sell him, I imagine, but Chelsea will want to. Trevor Chalobah, they want to sell. Ben Chilwell, Raheem Sterling. Armando Broja's really close to going to Ipswich. Romelu Lukaku, like, talks are ongoing with Napoli. So that number that people are reporting, obviously it's huge in terms of the whole thing. But as a job for Enzo Maresca, his job is the same as most people's jobs. His job hasn't changed. He has got a squad of about 25, 26 players, which I think is normal. So his job hasn't changed at all. Obviously, Chelsea will want that number of those players training away to go down. But in terms of that 45, Enzo Maresca's got 45 players to deal with. He doesn't. He has got, he had 20 trained with the other day. So it's not as bad as people are making out. Obviously, there are issues in terms of that squad should never be that size, obviously. But in terms of him and his job, it is nowhere near the numbers that people are saying.
OK, well, Chelsea in action tonight. And just to recap what happened live on the show yesterday, actually, on Transfer Talk, Chelsea confirmed the signing of Joao Felix from Atletico Madrid, while Conor Gallagher's transfer in the other direction's also been confirmed. Amazing pictures here. What a welcome for Conor Gallagher in Madrid. Packed out stadium. I think there were motorbikes in action as well there. Absolutely magnificent for him there to get that kind of reception. Also, Napoli sporting director Giovanni Manna is back in London trying to close deals involving English clubs. Chelsea and Napoli yet to find an agreement for Romelu Lukaku. Armando Broja's completed his Ipswich medical ahead of a loan move from Chelsea. That will become permanent if Ipswich avoid relegation and stay up. So lots to get through with Chelsea. On the way for you, Manchester United are in the market for a new midfielder. Will they get that deal done for Manuel Ugarte? Welcome back. Talks are understood to be advancing between Manchester United and PSG over the signing of midfielder Manuel Ugarte, and Flex is taking a look at who his competition is in that Manchester United midfield.
Yeah, of course, a big, massive signing for Manchester United should this get over the line. Manchester United really wanting to improve in that midfield area. But let's take a look at exactly why Manchester United are in for Manuel Ugarte of PSG. We can see here a comparison between himself and Casemiro per 90 minutes last season. And just look at the interceptions if we start there. 1.6 per game, higher than Casemiro's 0.7. So in terms of breaking up play, it's very much a skill set that is very familiar with Manuel Ugarte. More tackles per 90. He's dribbled past less as well. We have seen that side of Casemiro's game, especially last season, where opponents would try to dribble past him and get away from him and usually have quite a lot of success. That was not like that in the first season, but that was somewhere where Casemiro did quite struggle in the last season. In terms of ground duels won, again, very combative. Near enough 6 there for Manuel Ugarte to Casemiro's 4. The amount of times he loses possession. Now, you could argue that Casemiro sometimes actually plays quite advanced for Manchester United, putting crosses into the box, trying to thread passes through the lines, which maybe isn't his best part of his game, but he did that quite a lot for Manchester United. But again, Manuel Ugarte, a lot safer in possession as well. And in terms of successful dribbles, in terms of carrying the ball, Ugarte stands out in that situation as well. I think what we can clearly see here is the type of player Manchester United will be going for is somebody who wants to win the ball back, someone who's good at 1v1s and duels and can also carry the ball through midfield. A lot of times Manchester United last year had very big open spaces. We saw Jamie Carragher talk so well about some of the problems in Manchester United's midfield, of how open they were, how susceptible they were to counter-attacks. And I think the thinking behind this transfer, should it happen, is to be able to plug those holes in terms of alongside Kobbie Mainoo, who is fantastic on the ball, not necessarily one for breaking play up and covering big areas in midfield. Bruno Fernandes, you want him operating at the top end of the pitch, making things happen as he has done ever since he's come to Manchester United. And that leaves this space whereby Casemiro has been filled with that void of, can you plug that hole for Manchester United? Can you hold down the fort while Erik ten Hag wants to play on the front foot, vacate the midfield, keep teams penned in, and if we do have a counter-attack, get back in quickly and cover the ground. And Manuel Ugarte, as we can see, clearly fits that bill. So if he does end up at Old Trafford with the options that they do have with Bruno Fernandes, with Casemiro as well, and Kobbie Mainoo, what sort of impact do you think he could have, Liv? Do you think he could be the answer?
Yeah, I actually do think he could be the answer. You mentioned it there about, the space he can cover. He is a number 6, and I think defensively is where he's made an impression and why he's probably getting the move to Man United. But he's second for possession 1 in the final third in the whole of Ligue 1. And only last season, it was Palhinha that averaged more tackles across all 5 of Europe's top leagues. Manchester United last season were just far too easy to play through. Like we say, what Casemiro has done, he's been absolutely brilliant across his whole career. There's no denying that. But he just doesn't have the legs anymore to get around the pitch, and that's something that Manuel Ugarte is brilliant at. His former manager in Uruguay said he has 7 lungs. He never stops running, which is something that Manchester United definitely need. And before you all come at me, this is not me saying he's like N'Golo Kante, all right? Just
sure?
Is it right? Just to clarify, it's absolutely not. But Luis Enrique said when he managed him at PSG, he said he reminds me of that sort of player that doesn't stop running, that gets around the pitch, that is so difficult to get past because he's always there. He's always in that space that you want to get into. So, yeah, again, to clarify, it's not me saying it. Luis Enrique just says he's like that. But I genuinely believe with the options that Manchester United have, he would be the perfect partner for Kobbie Mainoo.
He's an in-your-face footballer, isn't he? What about Ugarte and Casemiro playing together? Is that going to be a thing?
Yeah, it could be. I think it depends on the games that they have. If they're playing, either Man City or a Liverpool, one of those top teams.
Is that a with Kobbie Mainoo? Or not? Because I feel like Kobbie Mainoo starts every single game.
I think Kobbie Mainoo, he's proven that he can also play different roles. It would be what we see when they want to be a bit more robust in midfield. Like you said last season, they were so easy to get through because Casemiro was asked to do 2 jobs. And maybe in previous years he would have been able to do that. But we saw similar to when they faced Fulham, the gaps were closed, If Ugarte is in that midfield, I think he will just accommodate that. Also, he can learn from one of the best DMs that's ever played the game, and he can give him some rest in the other competitions that they're playing in. So I think it just gives them another option to, succeed in the trophies that they're trying to win.
sometimes I feel like we forget how young Kobbie Mainoo is, and you kind of think you want to protect him a little bit. He needs the time and space to be able to make mistakes. He's going to have peaks and troughs in his season and in his career as he develops into the player that he's going to be. So he might sometimes need taking out the firing line and United having a little bit of extra steel in that midfield. Erik ten Hag talking to the media a little bit later on, 4 o'clock. We'll bring that to you on Sky Sports News. And United going to Brighton this weekend in the early kick-off. And we're going to be hearing from the Brighton boss as well, Fabian Herzler, very shortly. Plus, we've got news on 3 potential incomings at Fulham. This is Good Morning Transfers. Manchester City are closing in on the re-signing of Ilkay Gundogan from Barcelona. There is a 1-year deal with the option of another one on the table as well. I mean, I love this signing. Is this the difference between City winning the title and not winning the title?
Yeah, this season, or the start of the season, a lot of talk has been about Arsenal and them winning the league, because obviously they came close 2 years ago, came really close, took it to the last day last season. Manchester City just pipped them. And they're probably looking at this season going, yeah, now's our time. And what did Manchester City do? Go and get back one of their best players. And I think he is still so underrated, Ilkay Gundogan, for what he did for that club. Obviously, their captain lifting it there, but 60 goals he scored for them, but the stepping up in the big moments and the big game. He played every single big game under Pep Guardiola. He was probably the first name on the team sheet, I would say, or at least one of. I think winning the Premier League is such fine margins. You know, it can be one moment, it can be one decision that leads to your team winning the title. Not that City need that, because it feels like they've already got those big moments and those big players in their teams. But I just think it could be individual brilliance, and I think Gundogan epitomises that. And I now think, I mean, I thought City were going to win the league anyway, but I know a lot of people thought Arsenal. But those Arsenal fans will be thinking,
what
why?
Can we do?
Why now?
Why? Because I genuinely think having him back, oh my gosh, I think that just it puts them to another level again. And it's hard for Arsenal to compete with bringing a player like Ilkay Gundogan back. So yeah, I just think City fans are laughing again.
For sure, it's so interesting because Pep and City didn't want him to leave in the first place, but because he'd done so much for the club, it's like you almost respect his decision to go on a new challenge. Obviously, Pep loves Barcelona as well, but then when you realise he's coming back and he's only signed one year contract with an option for an extension, it's almost as if like he's told them maybe this is the last dance for all of us. You look at the honours there. You know, he's won 5 Premier League, 2 FA Cups. He's got a brace against Flex's side in that, and then 4 League Cups, a Champions League. Like he's won it all, but he's obviously still not content with that. He could have gone anywhere, but he's decided to come back straight into one of the biggest challenges that there is in world football, and that is the challenge for the Premier League and be that good week in, week out, especially when you think about, Rodri potentially having a not a bit part role, but, there's a potential of him getting injured. Now they're looking at Gundogan. You can do that. You can play along Kovacic. It's just not fair.
This is what
This
is what Manchester City do. And when there was a little bit of a inclination that maybe Kevin De Bruyne might go to Saudi, maybe Ederson might go. A lot of reports it's Pep's last year. Is this sort of the natural ceiling, finally, of this City side, it's the last dance where they start to unpick it and a new City is reborn? You look at Savinho coming in, very similar to what Mahrez used to be. You look at how Doku is now, very refreshing. Alvarez is gone, etc., etc. And now they've gone and made this move at a point, actually, where they were light. It was the first time we've kind of seen Pep Guardiola go, actually, I'm not all right to just go with what I've got. Let's get in the market and see what's available. And Gundogan becomes available after only 1 year out. Exactly. And I remember I was in the press conference after the FA Cup final where they did beat Manchester United. And he was the topic then. I think Pep was saying, we live in the same block. I really want him to stay. Yeah. But it's up to him. And like you say, when you've clocked the game, essentially, and you've done everything there is to do, it was about a new challenge. But for him to come back into this Manchester City side, make no mistake, he will be picking up where he left off. There's no bedding in period. There's no, this looks a bit different from the last time I'm here. No, they're still champions. Pep's still there. Everything's still the same. And in he goes.
And I actually think he could also perform a similar job to what Alvarez was doing, really, because when City didn't have the striker, he played pretty much up front for some of that season as well. Manchester City are looking at alternatives if they do decide they want to go into the market for a replacement for Julian Alvarez. Celtic's Kyogo Furuhashi is among the names that they are looking at as they decide whether or not to make another signing. He's had a remarkable time at Celtic, signed by Ange Postecoglou, scoring 53 goals in 96 games, shot accuracy of 56.3%, big conversion rate as well, both in his shots and big chances. He's been a fantastic signing for Celtic, and just in terms of Manchester City's overall transfer policy, I mean, it's so good, isn't it, really?
I mean, they very rarely get a transfer wrong, and it really wouldn't surprise me if he came in and just hit the ground running, because that's what they do. Everyone always talks about City now, well, they've got the most money. Obviously, they're going to sign the best players, but who would have heard of Savinho? How many City fans heard of Savinho before City went and signed him? Because I guarantee it's probably not that many. And he's come in and he gave Cucurella a bit of the runaround the other day. And like Flex said, I mean, he's a perfect Riyad Mahrez replacement. It's not just about the money, it's how you spend it. And most of their signings, perhaps maybe Bar Mateus Nunes hasn't quite worked out as they probably would have thought. Calvin Phillips is another one. But when you look at the signings, especially under Pep Guardiola, 90% of them have worked out, but also not just coming in, I think going out as well. You know, they seem to get those sales done at exactly the right time, because Raheem Sterling, it feels like they sold him when they felt like, and it was the perfect time, really. Have they missed him? No. Have they missed Zinchenko? No. Have they missed Jesus? No. Will they miss, you know, Cancelo. I mean, Calvin Phillips, have they missed Cancelo, like
Sane,
Julian Alvarez, Sane,
so
like you know, it just feels like everything they do is spot on, and that is why they are the best club, or you know, one of the best run clubs in the world, because they just know how to do things. They get it right nearly every single time. And when you look at other clubs and you just think you could learn a lesson or two from the way that club is run, yeah, they get it spot on every single time. And like I say, it's just really unfair. It's unfair
They
on
just
everyone.
don't force it. They just don't force it at all. Like, when you look at the signings that they've made, when you talk about the striker situation before Haaland, they didn't force it. They played without a striker. Left-back situation, similar. So, yeah, it's a credit to Pep, because he knows how to utilise players in so many different positions.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty more to come. Any more on Ilkay Gundogan, we'll bring it to you on the show before we go off air if it happens. Let's hear from the Brighton head coach, Fabian Hürzeler, then, about potential incomings there and also outgoings before the transfer window closes. He's been talking to our reporter James Green ahead of their game against Manchester United in the last few minutes.
Look, there is still talk of potentially more incomings. I know names like Matt O'Reilly, Ferdy, Karioglu has also been mentioned. I know you won't speak about specific players, but look, last week you said you're happy with the squad, but are you now in a position to go, okay, yeah, maybe one or two, that would be perfect right now?
Still happy with the squad. And in the end, I only can work with the players who are here. And that's my focus. The other things I can't influence. So I'm really focusing on the work of the players here. I'm really enjoying it, working with them. I think they try to improve every day. They have a great attitude. They come here to the training ground with a positive energy, with a good vibe, and that's the most important. And the other things I can't influence, and we will see what happens.
Finally, outgoings. Are you expecting many more to leave the club? I know Abdullah Sima's now off to Stade Brest for the season. Any other potential loan moves? Valentin Barco rumoured to potentially go to Sevilla. Is there anything you could add on that at all?
So the most important for me are that the players who work with here, that they know how we plan with them. So we communicate very, very transparent with them and very open, because in the end I will never play with hope for the players. So I wanted the players happy. I wanted the players can develop, and we have to create an environment where they can develop. And if a player doesn't have the feeling that he can do it here, of course, then he has to look for another way. But I can't comment on any rules because I don't know it. The only thing I can say is the players, they know how we plan with them, and then it's up to them.
Well, I had a shocker because I put Barco in my FPL team.
Same.
So, yeah,
Same. Shocker.
sure. poor, very poor. Anyway, on the way next, with news from Brentford, Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest. Welcome back. It could be a really busy week for Fulham. 3 potential incomings. They're understood to have agreed a fee with Lyon for the France under-21 midfielder Ryan Cherki. Joachim Andersen had a medical yesterday ahead of a move from Crystal Palace, and Sander Berge is finalising his move from Burnley as well. Let's start with Cherki, I guess, first of all. It seems like he's one that's been talked about for ages, and he's still so young.
Yeah, he is. He's still only 21 years old, and I think he was regarded as one of the most exciting prospects to come from Lyon's academy. He's made over 100 appearances, nearly 150 appearances for them. He is a French international, but has only made appearances for the under-21s. He actually won a silver medal at the Olympics in the summer. He's a number 10. I mean, he can play anywhere across the front four, which I think is probably appealing for Marco Silva. He can play as a second striker. He can play as a number 9 as well. I think that the issue is he's really struggled for form and consistency this season. That has been his issue, and that's probably why he hasn't got a move before now. I mean, Chelsea linked with everyone, so but Chelsea were linked with him a year ago, and actually Fulham showed interest a year ago in January as well. So the interest has always been there, but now could be the time. I mean, I really like what Fulham have done this window or are about to do. I know they've only made a couple of signings as of right now, but I mean, Cherki could be like quite a good addition to that attack. But it's, trying to find that form and that consistency that he found earlier on in his career when he sort of came through at Lyon. That would be the issue.
Well, let's talk a bit more about those deals that they're about to do. Joachim Andersen, how do you think he will impact Fulham?
I think he'll be a great signing for them. You know, he's been one of the best centre-backs in the last few seasons. When he was at Fulham originally, he formed a really good partnership with Tosin. Then he did the same at Crystal Palace with Guéhi. Didn't miss a game in the league. Disciplinary issues, not many. I think he had around 7 yellow cards, never been sent off. A real leader from the back, and one of the examples of a modern-day centre-back that can play out from the back. He's got a few assists from launching it from either his right foot or left foot. And I think him going back to Fulham is a really good move for Fulham, especially because they're getting someone that's familiar with the surroundings, that knows, OK, cool, we're trying to achieve something here. He feels like, OK, this is another challenge, because sometimes players don't go back to clubs that they think they've already surpassed in a sense. So it's good to know that he's still keen on that. And I think him and Bassi can create a really good partnership. So it's a really good move for them.
I'm actually quite surprised that no other clubs come in for him, because I like everything Sam says. I think he's absolutely brilliant as a centre-back. You could argue he's been Palace's best centre-back, and you know, Guéhi off the back of a brilliant Euros is the one that's looking to get the bigger move for the bigger amount of money to a bigger club. No disrespect to Fulham, but I'm really surprised that one of the big clubs haven't come in for him. What he can offer you as a centre-back, I think, is second to none. I mean, his ability on the ball is out of this world. Like, you'd struggle to find many better centre-backs that can ping a ball, a cross-field ball, and it will land at your winger's foot. He's been so brilliant at that, and it gets you out of trouble so much when you've got a ball-playing centre-back that can do that. So, I mean, for Fulham, I think it's an absolutely brilliant signing. But yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that, no disrespect to Fulham again, that perhaps maybe like a bigger club that are maybe playing in Europe haven't come in for him, because he's not that expensive, I don't think.
I agree with you. I mean, he can play in a 2 and he can play in a 3, and he can defend wide areas, good box defending, good in the air. He's almost like got the full package. The only thing maybe that might put off a bigger club is can he run the other way? What's his pace like, defending and running back towards his own goal? If you're a bigger club playing,
I think that would be the
more
only
high possession, higher line
question mark.
But I think he's a brilliant signing for Fulham. And Sander Berge as well looks like he's going to be coming in. What does he offer them?
Well, João Paulinho is such a massive hole to fill. Very unique player, fantastic player, and Fulham done well to hold on to him for an extra year. But he's probably a natural fit in terms of that area of the pitch for Fulham. They had a couple of failed bids for Scott McTominay, which we know. But actually, stylistically, if you're going to get rid of João Paulinho, you probably don't go and get Scott McTominay to go and have that role. Someone like Sander Berge understands the position. He can intercept. He can play safe passes. He can. And progress the ball well. And now Fulham, with the addition of Emil Smith-Rowe, and you've got Andreas Pereira ahead of that, They've got players who can get on the ball and make things happen. But Sander Berge, I think, is a fairly safe bet. I think he understands the league well. He's experienced through his time at Burnley and Sheffield United as well. We can't forget that. He's been around a little while now, Sander Berge. And he's an international player as well. So I think he'll just give that calmness, that level-headedness in there. Won't try and overplay or do things that are beyond his capability, but will follow Marco Silva's instructions to the T and give the team that balance, which, again, if you lose João Paulinho, you have to find a defensive-minded player who can do something somewhat similar. I'm not saying he's as good as João Paulinho, because he's not. But I think from Scott McTominay to him, profile-wise, with what they need in that team, that makes more sense to get Sander Berge.
Well, if you missed it yesterday, we had Thomas Frank live on Transfer Talk, and he was talking to us about the future of Ivan Toney. This is what he had to say.
His training, good attitude, no problem. As I said, we took the decision last week because there obviously is something going on. But Ivan is doing what he can do, and in fact, he's training out here. I think for him, it's always, he needs to feel what is right for him. And then we all know if that's going to happen, there's two clubs that need to agree and all that. But he needs to feel what he feels right for him is the club that is coming or the clubs that are coming, and that's what he wants. I think he's spoken quite vocal about want to try something new. I also know he's been speaking quite vocal about how happy he is here at Brentford, so let's see.
He said you never know in football whether Ivan Toney would be available for the Super Sunday game at Anfield against Liverpool. Can you expect to see him make a U-turn and be back in that side?
I think it's difficult. It's a difficult one to call at the minute. I think it's pretty much a waiting game. I think the noises coming out of Ivan's side is he's waiting to see what happens with this. A little bit in the dark at the minute. He's available to play, wants to play, has been training, did want to play against Crystal Palace. It was suggested to him that they don't play him. He would obviously want to play against Liverpool. Why not? Ivan Toney always wants to be on the biggest stage possible. I don't think it'll be any different to a game at Anfield. But I think with Brentford assessing bids for him at the moment and there not being a resolution with that, it's very much a patient game that needs to be played. But I think there will be some frustration, maybe from Ivan Toney's part, in terms of this hasn't just come out of the blue in terms of from his ban. They knew that it would get to this stage of a window and this would probably be his last season at the football club. There hasn't been a lot of offers on the table, and I think maybe one of the reasons why we're seeing that is because of the price point that's been put on Ivan Toney. Of course, Brentford entitled to ask for what they deem is a fair price for him, but at the same time, if Ivan wants to move and have his options as open as possible, he would probably want the price to reflect that, to give him the flexibility to be able to move where he would like to. So a bit of a difficult one at the moment, and I'm sure Ivan will want to get it sorted as quickly as possible so he can get some clarity.
OK, well, we will wait and see what develops on the Ivan Toney situation. Good Morning Transfers is back at the same time tomorrow morning. Do join us from 9 a.m. We've got plenty more to come today. Transfer Talk, we are back at midday. And for a full roundup of all the day's news, catch the Transfer Show tonight at 5 and 7 p.m. Do head to the website and the Sky Sports app as well for all the latest transfer news on our live blog. And the football show is on the way for you next. Paul Merson joins Rob Joes on the show live in just a few minutes' time.